Want to learn how to tune electronic fuel injection live in person with the guys from RealTuners? We have 2-day courses in dyno shops all across the country. You can register for these at RealTuners.com and click on RealTuners Live Classes. For more information or to make a reservation, go to RealTuners.com or message us on Facebook at RealTuners LLC. Now, about those classes. When are they, you might ask? March 30th and 31st, late model Dodge and Mopar factory ECU tuning with Rick Tapp in Dallas-Fort Worth. April 13th and 14th, a Level 1 EFI course at Endless Performance in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. April 27th and 28th, an advanced class at 417 Motorsports in Springfield, Missouri. May 18th and 19th, a standalone EFI Level 1 class at 417 Motorsports in Springfield, Missouri. June 15th and 16th, a Level 2 advanced course in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at Endless Performance. And of course, we will be trying to schedule more classes and more dates throughout the year, so keep checking back for more info. Tonight's special guest has got a car that can get down a dirt road. They say spinning ain't winning, and you definitely ain't winning if you're spinning against this guy. We're talking about No Prep with Joey Hiykel, Joe Hunt, and the Beater Bomb car. And as usual, we have our normal panel of hosts. Bill Fowler of Big Hat Racing. Chad Reynolds of Bangshift.com. James Short of Shore Tuning. John Bewley of John's Motorsport Solutions. Mark Dalquist of Throttles Performance. Scott Clark of RealTuners.com. Scott Evans of Helix Tuning. Rye Klemp from Clapped Out. Tom Sewell of Fuel Injector Development. Dan Parker, the movie star. He's blind in one eye and can't see out the other. And possibly a few of our previous guest hosts will pop their heads in and chat as well. And as always, thanks for tuning in. Now let's get this show on the road. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of RealTuners. Things are a little bit different tonight. We're only doing YouTube and Mixlr because Facebook is jacked, as most of you probably already know. All kinds of weird Facebook problems, which means I could not get the stream information to be able to feed the right key to make things go across Facebook. So hopefully everybody's figured it out from looking at the podcast fan page. Tell your friends, tell whoever else you know that's listening. Check it out, YouTube and Mixlr, Mixlr.com/RealTuners, and of course on YouTube it's just RealTuners. Without further ado, let me introduce our guests here tonight. We have Joey Hiykel and Joe Hunt. These guys are no prep racers, and they know how to get down dirt roads. They know how to make it go fast, and they know how to make it go on just about any surface you know. So without further ado, say hello, gentlemen.
Hello, gentlemen.
And, of course, looks like we also have Mark Dalquist in here, and looks like we got Mike Matajasic hanging out, too.
Yeah, we're on a skeleton crew tonight because, Scott Clark tore up his back, and he's on some pretty wild, is it painkillers or muscle relaxants, or what is that?
I don't know, something for his back. He jacked it up trying to move a heavy fridge.
Kicks the crap out of you. And John Bewley got tipped over by the Facebook issues, and he's trying to get caught up, so he's not on. Mike Matajasic was kind enough to join us. We've got Joey Hiykel and Joe Hunt with us, and it looks like Brian Barnhill has logged on also. So
cool.
We've got a few helpers tonight, but let's start out with the Beater Bomb car. I know of it because of just being in the group that I'm in, but I don't know a lot about the actual racing that you do, Joey, because it's not an organized sanctioning body. Basically, don't you go around and no prep, no time? Why don't you explain it a little bit, what you actually do?
Yeah, well, obviously where everybody starts is the street, but there's not always a street race to attend to, so that the no prep craze has overcome, and there's been a lot of races that have popped up where some of the ones that I really like are where they race on the end of the track, where you start at maybe 1,400 feet and race the shutdown area. Otherwise, a no prep on the normal starting line can get pretty good. And, power management isn't the top priority in those. And sometimes it's just whoever has the most money and whoever has the most horsepower, which is not me. I firmly believe I'm the best at power managing on any kind of surface, whether, it is really dirty, or dusty, or whether it's a good surface. I mean, it's not just in the laptop that you have to tune either. You have to be able to tune your race car, shocks, chassis, instant center, stuff like that. And, tire pressure. Sometimes we race on radials, which is very challenging. But otherwise, it's kind of not whoever has the most horsepower is the name of the game. It's whoever can make the best passes. And also in all the races we do, there's never any test passes. So you need to know to read the surface and make adjustments before you race, because you might lose first round and that be it. But
so how does Joe figure into this, helping you determine all of this?
Well, Joe also has a car of his own, and last year he actually ditched the nitrous setup and spent a whole year building his car for a twin turbo setup. And over that whole year, he came with me and was helping and learned a ton. We both learned a ton. I mean, that's part of it. And it really excelled the learning curve of his car, because we saw what worked and what didn't. And sometimes when you switch to a new combo, it takes years to perfect. And as Joe will tell you, we got it lined out in less than a few races, and he was out there winning big amounts of money. And
you had a new combination last year too, didn't you?
I don't really talk about but every year I try to optimize or make better, because there's always going to be somebody that is going to try to go faster also, and I have to stay ahead of the curve. Otherwise, they'll catch up to you.
Well, and kind of like what what Joey was just saying, as far as, we like a lot of the races where, traction may be challenged and it's really a tuning game in all aspects between chassis and in the laptop and everything else. But as the no prep crazes come along and some of these events are getting pretty big and draw out to some of the good tracks, like you said, that can come around to where the surface starts to get really good and it starts to become a horsepower race. So, we like to stick with the traction challenge stuff, but up to a certain point, you got to start having more horsepower to keep hanging with it, especially as the no prep stuff just gets bigger and bigger, and the bigger pots are at nicer racetracks that can accommodate more spectators, and so forth.
Now with running the two cars then and helping each other out, have you both switched to the same like ECU and same type of data acquisition, so that both cars are similar in that respect, where when you're switching back and forth, it's easy to do?
Well, as you know, no matter what my car does, it's not the same as Joe's car, because we have two different.
Yeah, right.
But yes, we both utilize the same strategies, I'll say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what my question was.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we know what tune-ups work with each cars, and if it doesn't work with Joe's, I know, like, hey, I need to make an adjustment, or vice versa, you know. And sometimes we don't race the same classes either, but, you know, there's been quite a few races where it's been me and Joe in the finals, and he goes out there and gives it his best, and I go out there and give it my best.
So do you guys play paper, rock, scissors to figure out who is going to make the first pass out of you two to determine what the street will hold?
No, and like kind of to touch on what he was saying, we learned really early on. 2018 was the first year with my car being a twin turbo car, or a turbo car in general, I should say. But mine is a twin turbo LS deal. And before that, it was nitrous, and I had zero data acquisition. So it made a huge step from 2017 to 2018. And figuring out my car, we learned really early that everything we knew with Joey's car, with the beater, we couldn't apply it to my car. My car being a different chassis, different, too much stuff was different to where it didn't behave the same. However, the advantage, or one thing we can use with that, is that we both know each other's cars so well, since our programs work so closely with each other, that if we take my car and goes out first pass or whichever, and Joey can read off what it does, and vice versa, I can read off of what his does, to make changes accordingly for our own cars. But commonly it'll be different stuff because, like I said, the cars don't behave the same.
Right, where maybe you pull some timing out, Joey changes a shock, let's say, just as an example. But you're both after the same result.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I was more asking along the lines of, when you're working back and forth, say like if you're dirt track racing and you've got a couple of cars, you're going to use the same brand of shock absorbers, and and you share them back and forth. You're going to use the same, there's various, the same wheels with different offsets, so you can change back and forth. And that way, instead of having a completely different program, the one guy can help the other. And so I was asking along the lines of, when you went twin turbo, I don't know if Joey's single or twin, it doesn't matter. But if you're using the same types of sensors, the same ECU, the same brands of shocks, so that you have that knowledge base, or are you completely different on both cars?
They're pretty different, especially being, one's a Fox body and one's a torque arm car, being a Firehawk or an F body. Chassis wise, they're completely night and day different cars. And even with electronics, we just really kind of share the same strategy for data acquisition and power management. But beyond that, they don't really stay. That's really at the end of the similarities.
So then we have a listener that asked a question already, and I'm going to scroll up here. It's on our Mixler feed, and it's Turbo Sleeper, and he has two very important questions. One was for Chad Reynolds, who's not with us. The other one says, why should I vote for Joey and Joe over Dykman and Andrade? Are you guys applying for the Horsepower Wars?
So we'll kind of dive into that a little bit. When they first, announced season 2 and everything, me and Joey we were on just a little road trip to go get a few things. And I kind of talked to him about it, and we were just, passing the time talking about it. We both watched season 1 and really enjoyed it. And I was like, I think we should maybe put together a team. I think this is something we could do good at. And we'd be a team of really relatable guys. We race, a lot more than the average hobbyist, but we're still, regular guys that work regular, 8 to 5 jobs, and, but, spend every weekend and every extra dime we have racing these cars. And so, that's what we did, got together with, a bunch of other guys that we work with and have helped us out and so forth, and put together this team. But that's really kind of goes, it spiraled. We applied, and then next thing we know, we made the top 10. And, after we made the top 10, then next thing you know, we're scrambling and throwing together a video and kind of to introduce ourselves to everybody, with the Horsepower Wars program. And then next thing you know, we were in the top 5 and we're in this public vote. So, we applied. We put together Team Midwest Mayhem that consists of myself as the team leader, Joey as the driver, We got Chad Fagley, who's the owner of the Shop Inc. in Lincoln, Nebraska. He put together a lot of pretty known social media cars like 1320 Video Kyle Loftus's Unicorn C5 and the Sketchy Vert, and he's got various race cars of his own, a really nasty stick shift C6. And then we got Brad Vasco of Vasco Speed and Performance out of Lee Summit, Missouri. He does tons of fabrication for both Joey and I. He's done a lot of the fabrication work on our cars. In fact, my car is at his shop right now getting an updated cage and some odds and ends like that. And then we've got Sean Clark, who is the crewman for both Joey and I. So it's often us three running around like crazy when we're racing both cars, but he's our number one guy that helps us out with everything and anything we need. So we got him on the team, and then another local racer here from Omaha. His name's Josh Walton. He's done a lot of Rocky Mountain Race Week and Drag Week both. Him and his wife both have Turbo LS cars. They go on the long distance style racing, doing index classes, and he's won quite a few times at both Drag Week and Rocky Mountain Race Week.
But to answer his question, why he should vote for us and not them, well, I hate to talk bad about anybody because I'm sure they're great guys. I only know the Andrades. I don't know the Mark guy, but we have experience with budgeting. I mean, we don't have any huge big name sponsors, helping us. Sure, we have quite a few that do help us, and it lifts a big financial burden off us. But you look at, like, for instance, I creeped on Mark's Facebook. You look at his car and it looks like $100,000 car. How are you going to have experience building a $10,000 drag car? But that's my opinion.
No, exactly. Yeah, like I said, I feel like a lot of the viewers for a show like that is a budget, a really tight budget to build a fast drag car. I feel like we're a lot more relatable to the general weekend racer, and we have so much experience with that. Is why we feel like we're going to go out there and do really well. Now the downside is, we're not professional high dollar radial racers, and this race is going to occur at a radial race. But, if we can get down dirt roads, I don't see why we can't go down a fly trap.
Well, you would think you can get down a fly trap, but things change quite drastically when you go from no prep to prep. And a lot of those high power guys that are used to running on the street on TV find out that their car doesn't work the same on a sticky surface. So it can be quite different.
Totally agree.
Just a heads up, if you're trying, it's considerably different. You'll find some weird things that happen if you're not ready for them.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say about with everything we do with a lot of the different racing we do is we've really, really learned, what kind of things to do in a chassis for different applications, and that does include when some of these no preps. I mean, it's definitely no fly trap, but I mean, even the first 330, but definitely the first 60 can get insanely sticky. And we're a group of guys. We don't race who's next to us. We really race the surface. And like I said, we're still not veteran with that kind of stuff, but I definitely get what you're saying as far as it's not just a matter of, go out there and turn it all the way up with your chassis set up to go down a dirt road, and it doesn't work that way.
I'm just going to answer one question here. The answer to your question to redrum RX-7, the answer to your question is no.
Yeah.
What ECU are you guys using in each of your cars?
Joe uses MS3 Pro Ultimate, and I recently switched to a Holly. But it wasn't because there was anything wrong with the Mega Squirt, and it worked great for me for a lot of years. I was
more ins and outs.
A problem, and it got to the point where I had to change the next thing on the list, and that was the ECU, and it did not fix my problem. So.
And now you have like 40 inputs and outputs available.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Holly. It works good too, and I've learned how to use it. It was definitely difficult at first moving from the MS3 to the Holly, but I really like how it works. I mean, it does what you tell it. I mean, that's about, as long as you're smart enough to think of a way to tell the ECU to do something, it'll do it.
Cool.
That's a good way of putting it. Joey, are you going to run to TX2K this year?
No, unfortunately, that is like this weekend, and I'm still waiting on a part. So that's just kind of the way things go. And, you
What'd
get
you break?
hung up on this. I'm waiting on a turbo. So
isn't that the normal? If you need a turbo, it's never ready right now. It's always on a wait.
It's a sore subject. I don't know if we should talk about it.
We don't need to get deep into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Texas 2K is not quite what it used to be either.
That's a bunch of roll racing. I mean, of course, if you want to do the drag strip event, I'm sure we've gone. When did we go, Joe? Back in 2013-ish, 14?
Yeah, 13 and 14 were the last years we took cars down with us.
Yeah, we've gone. We went 2 or 3 years in a row. And it was a good time back then, but it has gotten a little too large and just away from what we're geared towards.
So back to the horsepower wars. Have you thought about, if you get in, what you're going to do to take down the reigning champions?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely going to be the biggest challenge, because this is such a unique event, and they've done it, and they did really, really well. So they're definitely going to be the guys to beat, no doubt. But really, they don't have a set in stone set of rules yet, and there is a lot of rules to this build. So they've got some preliminary rules, but especially not knowing if those are firm into place, it's still a few months out from the build. We haven't got too serious about figuring out what we're going to do.
But there's nothing you can take away from them is the experience that they have and, how the show works and what tools they have and, just the layout. So that's going to be hard to overcome.
But I'm definitely confident whatever they put out for a final rule set, we'll be able to sit down. And that's really one strategy, that I really feel like we'll do well at, is that we will have a full plan. I mean, we'll have a nut down to the nut and bolt budget written out and planned out going into it. Another bit of difficulty with that as well, though, is that, I don't know if you guys seen season 1, but you don't know what kind of car you're going to get until you're there. So that can be really difficult in planning parts of the budget. Obviously, anybody would want to get a Fox body. That's, the go-to, especially on that kind of budget. But without knowing what kind of chassis base we're basing off of, it's really, really hard to get too crazy with it.
Do you guys have any places you really, really, really like to race? I mean, obviously home track, but do you have like some other tracks where you found that are like your favorites for the no prep stuff?
Obviously it's a lot of fun to go fast, and there's some really nice tracks that are really smooth that are a good change of pace sometimes, but I mean, you can't beat your local tracks that are half an hour away. We do a ton of traveling. I mean, we're talking over
40,000 miles a year.
Yeah. Right. And you run races like Armageddon and other ones like that, correct?
Yeah, we've gone to those quite a few years in a row. That's a very large event. I mean, it just is really crazy. unfortunately, there's a local event that falls on that same date this year. So it's kind of up in the air if we're going to go again, but we've gone in the past few years and it's been a good time. And, I recently bought an RV, and so it's going to make the traveling a lot easier, I think, and staying at tracks and stuff. It was really hard on us to go to, you'd leave the track and go to a hotel and stuff like that. That's pretty hard. And so I hope that this will make it a lot easier.
Yeah, and trying to get beat up in a pickup truck versus an RV when you're rushing home across the country because you got to get back to work on Monday morning. But also to touch on, I-29 makes such a good no prep track, being that's our local track, because, beyond just the no prep surface, it's got, it's typical small, eighth mile track. It's got a lot of bumps and other challenges that make it, really interesting to race on. But kind of like we talked about earlier, I think really one of our favorite things, I guess I would say my favorite has been a lot of these races on the top ends of tracks or in the shutdowns. Particularly when they did it at Topeka for the No Prep Nationals late last year.
$10,000.
It might be partly because I won the Street Outlaw class, which the name is kind of odd for the class, but it was basically like a true street type of class. It was a DOT tire. And I did win that, which was $10,000. So that might be part of it, but it's just, it's so much, like you said, the surface is so much more like actually racing on the street. It takes a whole lot more to go down it fast, smooth, and consistent, and to constantly seeing where you can improve upon it, upon your combination to go faster down it. Makes it a lot of fun. However, it is kind of slow versus racing on a track. So there's trade-offs.
What's the biggest race that you ever won, Joey, and what's the biggest race that you ever won, Joe?
I
For last year, you won Conquer the Concrete right at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, there was a race on a brand new. It wasn't brand new track, but they grunded it down. That it was actually in Noble, Oklahoma.
Same track as Armageddon. Thunder Valley.
That one was $10,000, but I haven't won any larger than that. I just win a lot of races. I guess
a lot of $3,000-$4,000 deals.
Do you have a race that sticks out in your memory as being the most satisfying that you won, where at the end it was like, yeah, I just got it. It was a big deal. Is there one that sticks out?
No, not really. I guess. I don't know. I don't really have any that stick out like that. I just like winning, and I definitely don't like losing. But one thing last year I did learn, I probably lost more than I ever have. And when you lose, something changes inside you. You don't stop thinking about what you did wrong and what you can do to make it better next time. And, I've never had that before so many times. I'll say I had a lot of parts failures though. And that's just something that you'll encounter, and you gotta keep pushing. And I really rounded off the end of the year well and raced well into January and did pretty good, I'd say. But
there ain't no quit in our team at all, no matter what happens or where it is. It's always pushing forward.
Hey, Brian, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can.
Joey, Brian has a question for you himself.
All right, well, go with it.
Yeah, it's kind of like a DAC or your analysis strategy, what you're looking at data-wise and kind of your thought process going down in a case where maybe your setup's way off or not at all, but especially your setup's way off on, especially doing no prep stuff. You guys are probably seeing a lot of surface you're not used to or that you just don't know. You can look at it and get data, but as track temps and everything change, I'm sure you guys wind up places where your setup, what you thought would be good, is just way off. What's your sort of your ranking and where do you go through in your DAC analysis and how do you approach that?
Well, one thing we did invest in last season was a track gauge. I don't know if you guys are familiar with one of those, but it's kind of, you'll see it in Top Fuel dragsters. It's a little rubber pad that you stand on, and it has a torque wrench on it, and it measures the torque reading that it takes to turn that rubber pad.
As long as you turn it consistently every time.
Yep. As long as the same person uses it every time, it's pretty consistent with what it goes with. But you also got to remember is that number, you have no idea what to do with it until you gain that data over time. And, that's just another learning tool. But otherwise, the foot-o-meter, it works pretty good.
Right.
And I mean, not to, kind of toot our own horn or anything either, but we race so much with the poor surfaces and doing a lot of street. That's where we really came from, initially, that no matter where we end up, or if there's something we're unsure about, or it's a really, really bad, we always have, a tune-up that we know will literally go down a gravel road or just go down anything. And that's
back up, last chance. We know this will work. It may not be the best, but between driver and everything else, but the same.
Yeah, especially because if you end up on something that's that bad, most of the people are going to go out there and they're going to completely knock the tire.
Most of the people are going to be like, oh crap, look who I drew. And then they just throw everything they got at it.
That's also true.
Really, that's the wrong idea, going about it.
It can really, one of the more difficult things to really accept in your mind, especially, when you have a car that can make some horsepower, is turning the car down to go faster. It really goes against what you want to do, but sometimes it's what you got to do.
And I will say, obviously all the races we do, you don't get test passes. And if either one of us makes it past first round, you're picking up so much data that the gain is unreal. I mean, if we miss the tune-up,
you don't get any data.
Yeah, so if one pass on the road could be night and day difference. And that's what makes the no test passes so fun, in my opinion, is that you have to be really experienced in what you're racing on, whether you've raced on that particular road or track or surface before or not. And there's been places where I was clear out in left field and I lost. I mean, that's how it goes. You either put, the one time that I can remember is I just didn't put enough power in it, but that's what you get when you travel. You go to these places and you race a local that's raced on that surface 10 times and I haven't. Well, that's what happens.
One of the other things I tell people to invest in is a little weather station that you can read DA, you can read water grains, humidity, temperature, all those things, because how much power your car makes varies based on all that information. So you go from a midday to an evening and you've got sunshine and drier air to suddenly you're getting closer and closer to the dew point and the water grains come up and humidity comes up and now your car makes a whole different amount of power. So now you've got to either take out less or put in more per pass as the night goes on to figure out what works to get you down the fastest. So it's an extra thing that you got to do besides just saying, oh, the track is doing this.
Yeah, and that's effort. And some people don't want to put in the effort such as that. But, that's...
Yeah, and it's the same kind of thing. It takes reading the data and seeing what it does and then writing that data down. And then the next time you come up to it, looking back at your data in your little book and going, oh, that's what it does. This is what I need to do different.
Yeah, I think that effort thing is really kind of where I was thinking along it too, because it's easy to say experience. And that's where when guys ask us is like, well, it's easy to say experience, but we did a bunch of tracks. Joe, as you guys know, I do a lot of drifting. So that's why the whole setup, when your setup's way off, because we see a lot of tracks we don't drive all the time. But yeah, that experience is definitely the thing that goes out there. But I think what really captures that, like you said, you got to be willing to put in the work. There's a lot of guys in our end that aren't looking at weather. They aren't looking at that stuff. They aren't predicting. They're just reacting. So by the time they're there, they're already behind. I mean, where you said, your little book, at the pro level, it changes, but so many guys that aren't keeping a logbook even, and that's really, that experience is nothing if you're not keeping track of it and having some way to organize that, and whatever works for you in the end.
Exactly.
I think that really captures it, is, you got to put in the work and really think about it that way, rather than just want to show up and race and everything else comes second.
Yeah, beyond just experience, you gotta be able to learn from your experience. And still every year and every single time we go out and race, we learn something new, and we'll learn different stuff that just blow our mind, and that's not going to change any different this year. I'm looking forward to learning a whole lot more.
I'm looking forward to not losing so much.
Taking that, actually, you kind of touched on that a little bit. You talked about like really taking that. Do you find that you take your losses personal and really use that as sort of a motivation? Because that feeling sucks so much.
Well, yeah, nobody wants to ever lose. We're all out there wanting to win. And I mean, that's what motivates us. I don't go out there for fun, for sure. And I'll be the first to tell somebody I'm out there to win money. I'm not out there to get friends. And, and that losing, that's, it happens. And
and another part of that, with from the outside looking in too, even if I'm somewhat on the inside, is that when you have a name such as the Beater Bomb, that's, so well known in the type, in the type of racing that we do, that people expect that car to win. So when it doesn't, the other side of it makes, they won the Super Bowl. It's a big deal to them. So that puts a lot more pressure on Joey as well. In my opinion.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, obviously anything can happen, and I try my best to make sure the car is top notch, but like I was talking about switching ECUs earlier, is I was having a big problem and I could not get it fixed. And fortunately I was to the point where I was about ready to give up, and I had to call Scott. We weren't exactly on the greatest terms, and he was very willing to come over and help me work through the problem. And fortunately enough, we got it fixed, and that's how I was able to round off the end of my year on a high note. And because the car will perform good if everything works. I mean, it works good. It's, it has plenty of power. It just, if nothing works good, I can't win. That's just part of it. But yeah, I never learned anything when I go out there and win, because the car's working good enough. I won. Whoop-de-doo. But if I lose, I know something went wrong, or I did something wrong, and that I need to learn from it and not do it again.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. There's a lot of guys in every world. They just want to go out and drive and have fun. And I get that, that they're like, oh, I don't want the stress of competing. I don't look as like, oh, competing. Yeah, it sucks when we lose. We take that personal. That doesn't mean it isn't fun. But if we lose and we did our best, that sucks. But it sucks less than if we lose and we realize we just screwed up. That's the worst feeling in the world to us. And I think that's something that the non-competition guys don't get. And I just don't know how to translate that. And if you're not a competition guy, then even if you don't need to be a hardcore, but if you're not thinking about it like that, there's just a lot of stuff you're going to miss, because that's too much work and that takes away from the fun. But if you want to win and that's what makes it fun, that's what it takes. And in the end, it's worth it. But yeah, it sucks in the lead up. That's why not everybody does it.
Yeah, and you can't be afraid of it, because you gotta take the losses, and you gotta look at them as a way to learn, to, like you said, identify why you lost, or why you had this issue, et cetera, and what you can do to make yourself better. Always having that kind of outlook on things is how you're going to get better and go faster, and eventually start winning.
Yeah, and I'm not against people that are going out there for fun. You always got to have ducks, you know. I'm just saying.
We've got another listener question here, and I'm going to let Scott Evans answer this one first. Joey and Joe, you don't have to answer this if you feel it affects your program, if it's something you don't want to share. But we had a customer ask if anyone's using timing retard after launch, please elaborate if you're using it, how you use it. And, and this is going upon, controlling power management. And Scott Evans, you go ahead and explain, the reason why timing is going to be the best option for controlling power.
Sure. And this timing is often used for traction control, and it's primarily used with coils. You can't really do it with a distributor because you're very, very limited on how far you can move spark before you're suddenly jumping into a different cylinder when you're using a distributor, and you cause lots of problems by doing spark retard with a distributor. But with coils, because they react instantly to whatever you do within microseconds, we typically use traction control and timing launch control through timing, just because it's the fastest to react. I can put all my boost in half a second and be at full boost, and then still control all the power I'm making by taking a bunch of timing out of it. So the track will dictate how much you're going to take out. Obviously, some tracks, if they're fly paper, you can put a little more in it. If they're kind of slippery, you take a little more out of it. Same thing goes as going down the thing. We often do traction control by the same method because it's instant to react versus, like, I could do control by throttle, or I can do control by boost, but those things all react slow in comparison. Not to say that they're not to be used, because there's still things you can do with them, especially if you're doing over time. The timing takes immediately, but maybe it's not enough because the wheel's already spinning, so you got to let out of the throttle so it recatches, and that can be automated in some ECUs with a little bit of setup and a little bit of practice. But for the most part, on the launch, right off the hit, take some timing out. Again, it all depends on the surface, the track, the setup in your car, the chassis, everything to determine how much. Might be as little as 5 or 10 degrees, might be as much as 40 degrees. You can have pretty wide swings depending on the situation at hand.
Yeah, I mean, and just to touch on that, I would say, the only, of course, I use timing, because of the exact reasons that Scott just mentioned. The only other times it kind of will combination into other methods as well, like boost or throttle or whichever else, because we race on such bad surfaces, is you still have to get all of those elements in the right ballpark to be able to then fine tune it with timing, because it is the fastest reacting method.
Yeah, but you also got to remember, sometimes pulling timing will build boost. So
sure,
it's all in your setup, and sometimes, you pull too much timing and you don't have the proper wastegate or whatever, boost control, it'll start to raise boost, which will do opposite of what you're wanting when you're pulling power. So, like Scott said, you got to have everything. It varies on your setup and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, if you're not using timing retard, then I think you need to get up with the times. And there's a lot of ECUs that have that capability nowadays. Yeah,
and I think most of the modern ECUs we use that are aftermarket ECUs offer some kind of a launch control or a timing retard to them in some way, shape, or form. Some of them are activated with the release of a button. Some of them you have to tell it that you want to use that table all the time. There's always ways to make that happen if you can. I mean, even a stock ECU, God forbid you're still on that at one of these events, that it would be much more beneficial to have the extra features. If you can always build it into the stock table if you really had to, if you can figure out where your launch is and how the timing moves through that spark table, you can build it in. I don't recommend it, but it's possible. Guys have done it. It's a lot more work doing it that way. It's always easier to do it with a dedicated table in an aftermarket ECU.
Yeah, definitely.
Is there anything else that anyone has to add? I'm kind of running out of questions here.
Yeah.
Are we answering them too fast?
Vote for Team Midwest Mayhem, horsepowerwars.com.
Yeah, I think we could easily say that the weather here in Vegas is nice, and the weather at Marks is like 6-foot snowdrifts I saw in a picture.
My whole driveway was shoulder height for 150 feet. It was wonderful.
I don't consider that wonderful. How about the out there by the I-29? How's the weather? Since you guys race there all the time.
Water. We're looking at some major flooding.
All the snow is melting. It was like 50 something today.
Yeah, we went from having a ton of snowpack on the ground to it's very suddenly getting warm, combined with a couple inches of rain on top of it, and all the rivers and everything are blowing up into moderate and major flood stage.
Do you guys have a rule on when somebody makes an event that might not be at a track, so to speak, and you're out that's a street closed off, ready to race on a surface that's already known to be sketchy? Do you guys have like some kind of a rule you follow for, hey, this is not our event because, hey, this is what the weather's doing, or it rained the day before, or, you know, the temperature drops a certain point, the dew point's coming up? Do you have like any specific things that you can say, oh yeah, when it gets down and our windows start fogging, this is the big change we see that we have to make, those kind of things?
No, if it ain't raining, we're racing.
And we raced in somewhere around the STL area, we'll say, and it was literally in the 20s temperature-wise.
That just means it's harder to get down for everybody else. And it's
Same temperature in both lanes.
Yeah. I might have won that one.
So if you guys do get in the show, are you going to take the RV down to California or the truck? What's your plan?
Well, we thought about it, but we might fly. We have to get voted on first. But yeah, we might take the RV or we might fly.
Rental car,
and
hotel, or gasoline? Which one?
Well, that's a 2-day drive for us as well. So I mean, that's 4 days of extra travel time when we're already going to have to take, dang near 2 weeks off of work.
Hey, Joe, we got a guy wondering if you're running a stock length or a long torque arm, or if you've shortened it up, or is that something you don't want to talk about?
No, that's okay. I'll actually share. My car does have a short torque arm on it. You'll see a lot of the videos and pictures and stuff of my car stood up on the back bumper. And that actually was with a long arm torque arm on it still back then when it was a nitrous car, which is kind of backwards what you'd think, but currently has a short arm.
And typically, as I understand it, the shorter the arm, the harder it will, or the quicker it will hit, the quicker it will load, but also the quicker it will unload, the quicker it will react. The longer arm is a little more forgiving, but the angle you have in the arm is going to determine where your imaginary instant center is. That's how I understand it.
That's really debatable. You are correct about the first part as far as, a shorter arm, it will hit the tire harder, but it will also expend that energy quicker. There's a ton of debate about instant center and torque arm cars. You get a lot of different information, and I'm definitely by no means an expert, but I've played with it a lot. And I'm a pretty firm believer that honestly, it doesn't care where the torque arm is pointed, or the actual angle of the torque arm is completely irrelevant. The theoretical instant center that it seems to follow true in my testing is that it is. It's where the front plane of the torque arm intersects with the, if you drew an imaginary line following your lower control arm forward, where that intersects with the front plane of the torque arm where it's mounted, that is your instant center, and that would be a vertical line. So therefore, if the arm moves up or down, that point is still in the same place. So the only way to change it is the angle of your lower control arm.
Yep. Yeah.
Do you guys know how to? I was just reading a question off. Next, go ahead. Well, I was just said someone popped up. Do you guys know how to set up a small tire radial car for a radial track that's stickier than anything you've ever felt? not just pulling shoes off, pulling the soles off your shoes?
The answer is yes, I do.
Yeah. Yes. I think we have enough understanding of how different stock style suspension systems work that although it's not something we've done, I feel pretty confident that we can get something in the ballpark and beyond that with some power management skills to control wheelies and such, do pretty well.
My experience is
we've gone to, since there are so many cars that race at them, such as Outlaw Armageddon, the surface becomes almost radial prep up to, 300 feet or so. And it's the tricky part is after the 300, 330 foot is where people get, that's why you see all your wrecks on the big end, is because the rubber doesn't get out there that far. But most of these no preps that we've gone to that are really large, the starting line is unreal.
And so then there's a big transition.
And so it's not that we've never raced on a radial prep track. We've raced on tracks like it, I'll say, but we've never actually gone to a radial event. But I feel like Joe said, we have enough understanding of how things work. And, we've tested what does what and which direction to go to, that I feel like we'll have a good handle on it. And at the Horsepower Awards, they give you 6 rounds of qualifying, whereas we're used to having 0 rounds of qualifying. So I feel like we'll definitely be able to get it dialed in within 6 rounds.
Well, and the other thing to remember is the prep is for cars that are going to run low 4, high 3 second, 1/8 mile, like really fast stuff. And the Horsepower War cars, they just aren't that fast. But let me rephrase that. They go like hell, but they aren't at that level. The thing is that when you're on a racetrack that's that good, it becomes more forgiving. As long as you're not, when you have more tire than power, then the racetrack is more forgiving. When you have more power than tire, then the racetrack is more important. So I'm not sure that the racetrack is going to affect you as much at Horsepower Wars as it would be if you were on a slick racetrack.
I agree. Another thing about that I will say that's, I guess I don't know this 100% for fact. We're not in this deal yet. We did a vote.
Yeah, we got a vote.
Secondly, the rules are only preliminary so far, but it's, from what I'm seeing and what I've kind of heard, is it looks like it's going to be an 1/8 mile race this year, while last year was 1/4 mile. So that does obviously kind of amp up the importance of the front half of the racetrack.
Which is what you guys normally race anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah, we don't race any 1/4 mile stuff. The way I look at it is from the 1/8 mile on, you're just flooring it.
Yeah, that first 330 feet are where things are where things are really made.
Well, and also, I'm sure you guys find this out too. Eighth mile tracks, there's a lot to be said in reaction time and getting off the line. The quicker you can get off the line, the better reaction time you have on those things, the better chance you have at winning that race, even with minimal problems getting down the track. If the other guy's having the same minimal problems, if you're out of the hole first, you win.
I wish
I've been often accused of having a Bluetooth trans brake to the tree.
Wouldn't that be nice?
I have no idea who accused you of that.
Yeah, I don't either. That's what happens when you're good at something.
Do you guys prefer...
There was an entertaining meme floating around with about beater bomb, and it was the Olympic runners, and the one Olympic runner is out about 3 steps on everybody, and he's holding the starter's gun, and there's an arrow saying that's the beater bomb.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that one or not.
That one's great.
Yeah. Oh.
Do you guys find that you like racing better on a no prep race where there's a tree or where there's a flashlight guy?
Well, that's a funny subject. Is we don't care whether it's a flashlight or a tree, but you have to know the limitations of both. You have to know that if you're racing a tree, there is rollout. Whereas if you're racing a flashlight, they go off a tire crack. And then it makes the finish line that much more complicated because, if it's really close and you don't have the timing system to tell you that there was 2 thousandths within you and the other guy,
Right.
They have to go to the video, and then, it takes so much time. But I mean, that's the style of racing that we do, and that's just part of it. And that's usually the rules that beforehand, and if you're showing up to that race, you agree to those rules. I hate when people, always complain about the rules. Like, you knew the rules ahead of time. Why did you even show up? But yeah, that either one is fine in my book. I feel like I'm really good at either. I've been accused of cheating in both ways. So, I mean, you just have to concentrate on the tree. And, like you said earlier, the reaction time can make or break a race. And I've actually won a race based on reaction time before, back when I didn't race no time. And the other guy ET'd quicker, but I had a better reaction time. And, sometimes it pays off.
The first to the stripe still wins.
Yep.
Yeah, but I'd say Joey hit the nail on the head on that one.
Right on.
Which one's your favorite, Joe? Flashlight or tree?
I'm still a flashlight. I prefer the flashlight, once again, probably from coming from the street. But, same thing, kind of one deal is if you're at the racetrack, it really doesn't make much difference to me, but I do prefer using the tree if it's there and functional. It's dead on accurate. So why not use it is kind of my opinion on it. But
I guess it depends if you're paying the time shack guy to give him your time slip or not.
That's the only other downside, is when, especially when we're traveling, we're at other tracks, you get a car that's pretty notoriously well known as a no time car, and you're in someone else's backyard, even though the clocks are off, if that timing system's on, someone in the towers knows what kind of times are going down. And there's sometimes they are still giving out time slips where they cut them in half, and there may or may not have been instances where someone may have paid off someone at the time slip shack and caused some issues.
We do not recommend or condone these activities of paying people off to cheat.
Well, isn't that how you get into college these days?
Ooh,
I believe so.
Apparently.
No, I was going to say we were talking about 60-foot time earlier, and I kind of wish that Bill Fowler had been on tonight because Scott Evans and I had a discussion after hours with Bill, and he's got certain goals for his drag week car, and we started talking about it, and we realized that Bill was talking about making more power and doing this and doing that, but everything that Bill needs out of his car he could fix with a 60-foot, and if he fixed his 60-foot, he would be running where he needs to be.
Right.
So and that's I do a lot of naturally aspirated stuff, and I see a lot of the turbo cars, and they are so soft in the first 100, 150, 200 feet. There's a lot of guys that just, for whatever reason, they'll back half like crazy, but they cannot get it to go for the front half.
They would be amazed at how much faster ET they would go with way less power or boost in the car if they'd make it 330 properly.
Exactly.
And most of the time you can tell what they're really going to do by their mile an hour, because they're still going to go the same mile an hour whether they leave hard or leave soft. It's still going to be real close to the same. It's going to tell you right there.
Yeah, you tell them there's 4/10 in the car still on the same power, and they don't believe you until you get it figured out. And then all of a sudden it becomes easy to start going really fast. Once you really start figuring out that 60 foot and that 330, that front split it's more important than you can really emphasize, because it's the hardest though. It really is the hardest aspect to really dial in on something. And so that's why in these days where it's so easy to make all this power with turbo stuff and EFI, it's commonly overlooked.
Yep. It's also another reason why it's important to get your chassis right. If you don't know a guy, find a guy, pay a guy, make it so that somebody actually who knows how to make a car get down the track and make a car 60 foot and make a car leave the line right. Get somebody who can get you to do that. It's worth the investment, especially if you're going to races that can win you some money. Different if you're just having fun and you don't have that much money and you're just going out on the weekends to putz around on your own. Maybe you're not that involved in it. You don't really care. You're just going to experiment yourself. That's fine. But if you're going to make money, why not try to pay somebody to help make you money?
Or, get a good understanding of whatever type of suspension system you have. Obviously I have a torque arm, Fox bodies have the triangulated 4-link. Get an understanding of how that system works. What adjustment, which point, what geometry affects how the car is going to, react. Understand exactly what the chassis is doing. And there's all this information is out there if you dig hard enough for any different style of suspension.
And understand that the information out on the internet is mostly there. And, you're going to find some things that are still kind of, the guys keep it quiet because they're going fast and they don't want to tell you their little trick. But there's always somebody who's willing to teach you. If you look in the right corner or the right hole, you'll find somebody who's willing to teach you the information you need to make your car go faster.
Well, so many cars are so different and behave so different is why no one's going to really tell you, hey, put this bar here and this here and this and there and go out and it's going to work, because your weights are different, your power delivery is different, et cetera. Right. So that's why I always just recommend that you understand how your suspension system works. And then you just have to test and test and test and try different stuff. Because if you know how the system works and how how that suspension functions, then you can make an educated change to try and get the desired result.
One of the other things
thinking and working.
One of the other things I tell people is invest in a 4-link software if you have suspension that has movable points, because that'll at least tell you where everything is and what bar makes what changes to it. Some guys, you just move the top bar down one hole. Well, that top bar down one hole might move the instant center 20 inches further out, depending on how the lower bar is, or it might only move it 2 inches, depending on where your lower bar is. So it all works together. So knowing where those 2 points intersect in the chassis can tell you which bar to move, which way to move it, whether you're moving a point on the rear end or a point on the chassis, and the math, anybody could sit down and really do it on paper if you take enough time. It's not hard to do. It's very simple. Mark the points, draw lines that intersect, measure where the new point is, where they intersect at. But software does it instantly and much quicker for you when all you have to do is measure this hole is this far above the ground and this far in front of the axle. Done.
Yeah, and being an F-body guy, I'm insanely jealous of all that software because it still
works.
Not the same.
It's just it still works, just not quite the same.
The biggest thing I think is that if you understand your setup, you can go to the track and test it and make an adjustment right then and there. You don't have to call somebody, hey, it did this. And they aren't, and when you call them, they aren't there to even see what it did or even there to look at your data or watch a video. You have all that stuff right in front of you and you can make the adjustment, and it's a lot quicker if you take the time and effort to learn what you have going on versus, I know there's a bunch of people out there that make a living getting paid to do all that. But I'm telling you, as a grassroots racer, it's much easier if you can do all the stuff yourself.
Well, it's so important to be there with the truck car.
Yeah, the other thing I tell people is buy a cheapy camera. There's so many good $100, $200, $300 mounted on your car cameras, have somebody put it on a little stand on the ground so you can see how your chassis reacts. That is one of the biggest things you can look at, and you can see what things are doing. So like, you point one at the tires and you can see how much the tire is wadding up on you on a slick, and maybe you're noticing that it's really, really wadded up and it wants to shake. You can figure those things out. You can see, oh, look, it's wadding up too much. I need to add more air. Oh, it's bouncing as we're going. Maybe it's something, the shocks are set wrong. You can figure out what it's doing with a video because your eyes don't see it quick enough. We see 24 frames a second standard TV and movie frames are something that our eyes can't see that flicker. So that's how slow our eyes really are. Whereas the camera can do 60, 120 frames. Your eyes can't catch all of it. And not only that, it reacts so fast. We're used to reacting things in multiple seconds when something happens. Somebody throws a baseball to you. You've got time to react to catch it. If a tire moves, you don't have time to see all the little wrinkles that happen before they straighten back out because they happen in a split second.
Yeah, one thing I'll say is I really am happy I put shock sensors on my car last year. The data that you get from shock sensors is crazy.
So valuable.
If you don't have them, I feel like that's some missed data that you need. And especially if you race on all sorts of different surfaces, it's a lot easier to dial the chassis in if you can see what it's doing.
Well, we always look at frame by frame slow-mo video after every single pass. And so then after getting shock sensor data, both of our, tops of our heads just cracked wide open and how much we were missing before having that. It's really, really interesting stuff. I don't know that we know what we're doing with it yet, but it definitely, there's a lot more going on that you can't see even in a slow motion video because the car is also getting farther away. So it's pretty interesting.
It also
Before
pays.
we go, I was
to say, it also pays to take your, if you can get video and you can export your data from whatever device you're using, it also pays if you can import it into something else where you can combine the two and make them overlays so you can see what the shocks are doing at the same time you're watching the video. Like there's the race render software, there's the dashware stuff like I use. There's a couple data loggers that themselves, like the Motec stuff where you can add the video to the data log, and several ECUs allow you to put the video directly into your data logs with the software. But if not, you can always export it to something else, and a little more time consuming. But once you learn how to do it quickly, it becomes real quick and easy to do, and that way you can look at that data specifically with the video if you want.
Yep, definitely.
I had a driver that would refuse to line the car up where I wanted it. And he didn't understand where his position was in the car, like where his butt was in relation to where the car tire was. And I took a simple video of the car and said, "You see?" And he went, "Oh yeah, I'm way off." And then once he understood, then he started lining the car up properly. And sometimes you just need video proof to convince somebody that they need to make a change. We've got two more questions here before we go. Supercar wants to know the best way to get a better 60 to 330 time. His 60 is down to where he wants. He needs to get to the 330 quicker. Well, or if you're putting 100% of your power down after the 60, then the only thing you can do is add more power. If you're not putting 100% of your power down, then you need to figure out a way to put more power down. That's all you can do. As far as James McGinnis, my car makes 600 wheel, 3,780 pounds, does a 170 60 foot. What point does one know how much better the 60 foot can be? 127 miles an hour in the quarter. Well, 127 in the quarter, you're going in the low tens, and you should definitely be down in like a 130 60 foot without too much difficulty. You can go into Wallace Racing and use the Wallace Racing calculators, and you can see what a quote unquote ideal pass would be at that mile per hour as far as elapsed time. So if you're at 127 miles an hour, and let's say at that mile per hour, you could be going at 1040, I don't know if I don't know if I'm exactly right on that, but let's say you could be going at 1040 and you're running at 1070. Well, then you already know that you have 0.3 of a second to improve. Well, if you improve your 60 foot a tenth, that's 0.2 at the end of the quarter. So every tenth, everything you improve with your 60 foot is going to double at the end of the track, more or less, as a generic rule. Don't hold me to it. It's not a law,
At that horsepower level, that's about right. Yeah, probably.
My buddy Renee has I think it's actually a 2013, but he's got that body style of Camaro. They're like 4,100 pounds, right? Put a 9-inch in it, put a turbo 400 in it. Car went, I think it was a 127 60 foot, went 985 or something in the quarter, and it's a supercharger, like a F1. Making 24 pounds of boost, I think it was, something like that, or 22 pounds. I don't remember how much we had, but we went in the nines with it, a 127, 125, 60 foot, something in there. I can't remember the exact. 4,100 pounds.
So there you go. I don't have anything else to add to you, Scott, or Joe, or Joe.
I think I'm pretty good.
All I can say is make sure you guys go vote for us.
Yes.
We really hope we make it. We've put a lot of effort into this.
What's the name of your Horsepower Wars team again? Who do we vote for?
Midwest Mayhem.
Midwest Mayhem. Go vote for them. Give them the vote, guys.
And I'll just end on the same. Go vote for us. I mean, I'm not going to divulge to yet. And like I said, since the rules aren't set in stone, but I feel like we definitely have a really solid plan to really go out there and show what a couple of a group of grassroots regular guys can do with a small budget.
All right, you guys have a great night.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening tonight. Thank you guys, Joey and Joe, for coming on tonight. It's been great having you. Everybody have a great rest of the week. We'll see you next week on here. Thanks again for listening, RealTuners.com. And check out, we got classes, we've got T-shirts, we've got all our previous episodes on there as well. Have a good night. Do you want to learn how to tune electronic fuel injection live in person with the guys from RealTuners? We have 2-day courses in dyno shops all across the country. You can register for these at RealTuners.com and click on RealTuners Live Classes. For more information or to make a reservation, go to RealTuners.com or message us on Facebook at RealTuners LLC. Now, about those classes. When are they, you might ask? March 30th and 31st, late model Dodge and Mopar factory ECU tuning with Rick Tapp in Dallas, Fort Worth. April 13th and 14th, a level 1 EFI course at Endless Performance in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. April 27th and 28th, an advanced class at 417 Motorsports in Springfield, Missouri. May 18th and 19th, a standalone EFI Level 1 class at 417 Motorsports in Springfield, Missouri. June 15th and 16th, a Level 2 advanced course in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at Endless Performance. And of course, we will be trying to schedule more classes and more dates throughout the year, so keep checking back for more info. And remember, don't forget to have your host spayed or neutered.